Hello and welcome to Endurance Minded. It's the podcast that aims to redefine what it means to be an athlete by exploring how movement impacts our lives and how we can all work to reach our full potential. I'm your host, Taylor Thomas, founder and coach at TEC. And in this episode, I talk with Jody Bartz. Jody is the newest member of the TEC coaching team, and I'm so excited to have her on the show. I've had the pleasure of knowing Jody for a long time, and she brings so much energy and passion and commitment to her job as a coach and her experience as an athlete. And I feel grateful to finally be able to record one of our conversations so that everyone else can benefit from it and everything that she brings to her work as a coach, and again her experience as an athlete. One of the things to note is that Jody didn't begin her career as a mountain bike athlete until she was 41 years old. And so we start with talking about what that looked and felt like. Even though she had a history of exercise and being engaged with movement, she was still felt completely new. And with that came a number of experiences that we talk about, everything from just not having the confidence and learning a new skill to also breaking into new friend groups and learning new language and understanding where to look for help and how to define who she was as an athlete. And so I think in particular, this is a part of the conversation that so many people can benefit from, because we so often let age or inexperience or lack of confidence get in the way or inhibit us from really leaning into the person we want to be, or trying new things, or opening ourselves up to new experiences and new groups and new places. And Jody's experience uniquely captures that and also highlights how you can move through that. And it doesn't always have to be that way. And Jody has gone on to be a very successful mountain biker and very well respected, and also leverage those skills to be an amazing coach. And so that is a particular part of our conversation I think so many people can benefit from. We also go on to discuss how the language we use defines who an athlete is, and how we can potentially open up that conversation, that definition, so that that word athlete can be more inclusive and more people can feel like they have access to all of the things that the athlete experience provides. We talk about women on bikes. It's a passion for Jody's. She works with young developing female athletes on up through age group female athletes, among other individuals. And it's an area where she is uniquely positioned to provide support and provide perspective. And so we talk about just what that experience looks and feels like, and some of the things that are unique to the female experience as it relates to being an athlete that others may have not experienced. And so her perspective in this space is unique, and also comes from just a real place of wanting to support those individuals. And so you'll hear in her voice and how she describes how she feels about and her passion for working with female athletes, how committed she is to getting more of these individuals out and on bikes and engaged in movement, and all of the confidence and benefits that come with being an athlete. And we also talk about soft talk. So what soft talk is it's that feeling that you need to apologize, or you need to hide in the back, or maybe it's that negative self-talk when it comes to being new to something, or not having a particular level of confidence. And this comes from any number of places. It can come from being a specific gender. It can come from being a specific ability level or a lack of ability. It can come from a lack of confidence. Wherever it comes from, it's something that really inhibits so many people from starting their journey. Or maybe they start and then this soft talk derails them from continuing on that journey. And so we talk about, one, what it is, and two, how we can overcome it, Jody does an amazing job of helping the athletes that she works with overcome this self-talk, and all of the pitfalls that it can introduce into the athlete experience. So again, Jody's energy, her passion, her commitment to both herself as a coach and an athlete is something that I'm really feel honored to be able to highlight on this show. If you are interested in speaking with Jody, you can reach her at thomasendurancecoaching.com. You can click the button in the top right corner, or you can check out her bio. I would encourage anyone who feels like they are able to connect, or any of the things that we talk about on this show, if that resonated with you, if you feel like you've been in that space, or you're currently in any of those scenarios or spaces, please reach out to Jody. She would love to offer a free consultation with anyone who is interested in speaking with her. And again, you'll experience right out of the gate that passion that she brings to everyone that she works with. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Jody Bartz. Hey everyone, before we dive into this episode, I want to take a moment to tell you about InsideTracker. As I've talked about at length on the show, my passion is helping individuals discover the tools, resources, and relationships they need to reach their full potential. It's about more than just getting fit or being in shape for one race. It's about realizing the value in the lifetime pursuit of dedicating yourself to become the best version of you that you can be. So no matter what you love, whether it's running, riding your bike, racing, or just getting out to enjoy the great outdoors, you want to do it forever. That's where InsideTracker can help. As a lifelong athlete who's done everything under the sun, I've gotten blood work done many times over the years, and it's always provided critical information. Even when I was feeling great and training hard, my blood work uncovered critical deficits such as low vitamin D and elevated iron. Despite how your training is going or how you're feeling, InsideTracker helps to uncover specific, individual, and actionable insights that allow you to not only perform better, but feel better and be healthier. InsideTracker was founded in 2009 by leading scientists in aging, genetics, and biometrics. Using their patented algorithm, InsideTracker analyzes your body's data to provide you with a clear picture of what's going on inside of you and to offer you science-backed recommendations for positive diet and lifestyle changes. Then, InsideTracker tracks your progress every day, every step of the way towards reaching your performance goals and living a longer, healthier life. So, endurance-minded listeners can get 25% off the entire InsideTracker store. Just visit info.insidetracker.com/endurance-minded to take advantage of 25% off of the entire InsideTracker store. Being an athlete is about more than just completing the right workouts. So visit info.insidetracker.com/endurance-minded today to start taking a proactive approach to understanding what your body needs to perform better and live longer. Hey Jody, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going so good.
Good.
How's life in the desert?
Life in the desert is good. Other than I looked at the forecast for the 24 hours no Pueblo.
Yeah, so you got
And
that. When is that? That's in a couple weeks.
it's it's a week from this coming weekend. So it's like 18 and 19. So
Yeah.
and there's a nice little chance of rain and snow and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Several years ago, it's been a long time now. Honestly, probably a decade ago. I was working with an athlete who lived in Alberta, and our primary goal was Old Pueblo, and he was a really good solo 24-hour racer. So our goal was to win the race, and so we were really invested. We worked on this towards this for several seasons. You know, he had done some tune-up races, and we were really getting good, or he was getting strong. And so I was like, okay, if I'll crew for you. That way we can just nail it down.
Okay.
So he was driving. So here I am in Montana. He picked me up. We drove straight through the night.
Oh God.
Because whatever, it was miserable. From Montana, I don't know. You've
Oh
done it.
yeah.
I mean, it's like 20.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like
That's
it's like a day and a
18,
half or something. Yeah. I mean, it's brutal.
100%.
So yeah, we drove straight through. Got to Old Pueblo. Like Friday, got settled in, did like some tune-up laps. Weather was nice, and then the weather turned, and that was the coldest. Like it was a blizzard when I left my house, like in Montana, and that was the coldest I've ever been in my life. Like it was, well, because I wasn't riding, right? Like
Right.
I would. We had a couple bikes, and we would tune up. Like because it was nasty. Like his bikes were wrecked after each lap. So he would bring one bike back. I would service the whole bike, like replace chains, cassettes. Like it was wrecking everything. Do like fork service, because I mean they're long laps, right? Like it's a 16-mile lap, and then I'd give him his bike back. But in between that time, like I was just standing under a tent in the freezing cold, and that was one of the most miserable experiences of my life. Like it was so bad. It was bad for him, but he was riding, and you're in that space where you're like, well, I'm riding for solo for 24 hours. Like it's gonna be miserable no matter what. Um, and oh man, I just like it was horrible. So I don't know. Hopefully you don't get that weather, but I do have my own bad. I raced that race a few times. When I raced it, I always had good weather. It was like warm and it was awesome. But
Right.
as a crew member, um, it was horrible. Like
I
I
was
I
I
literally
was I was
yeah. Go ahead.
I I was resorting to I'm now resorting to like plan B. We luckily have a sportsmobile van. And so I have a spot on Solo Alley with another young man, so super rad guy, with like a whole like litany of folks, you know what I mean, to crew for both of us. But he messaged me the other day and said, "Oh, I don't have the fire pit this year." I'm like, "Whoa, like that is problematic. Like that's."
Yeah.
But then I'm like, "Wait, you don't want to be hanging out in the tent. Like you want to like move it on
No.
out. You know what I mean, in the tent."
Yeah.
Luckily, or maybe unluckily, I'm doing it single speed, so at least there'll be no drive trains to, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So,
Yeah.
but I'm sure
That's a
I'll chew
great
up
that's a
some.
great single speed course. Like
It
I
is.
raced in single
It
speed a
is.
couple times. And then last time I was down there and pre-rode the course, I had single speed, and
Yeah.
it's great. I mean, there's a
Oh,
couple
it's yeah.
little punchy, but I mean, it's such a fast, like you know, flat, relatively flat.
Well, then you can appreciate the 3420 that I'm gonna run that's gonna feel like stupidly spinny, you know what I
Yeah,
mean, at
yeah,
at the first, you know what I mean, 5 or 6 hours, but somehow I think at 1:45 or 3:15 in the morning, that 20 is gonna be glorious. Like, it's gonna
yeah.
be
That's a good decision. The last time I raced El Pueblo, and when I was racing solo 24-hour races, like 12 and 24-hour races a lot, I was feeling really good about myself, and
Oh, yeah.
I raced it was a 36:17,
Oh my
and
god.
I felt really cool like for the for first 6 hours,
Oh, yeah.
and then I was like, what a horrible decision. Like, my legs were so wrecked, and it
Well,
got to the point where
and you can't change that rear cog because that's not single speeding, you know what I mean?
right,
That's
right.
you know what I mean? So you're stuck with that. I mean, if you're gonna
Yeah.
be honest, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
so
it's
I'm
it's ride or die at that point,
I
you gotta
totally.
stick with it.
I'm going out like a little hamster, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
just getting out there. So a whole lot of life has happened in the past 6 or 7 months, and so that self-doubt creeped in real hard about a month ago, and and I found myself like literally logging onto the site thinking, can I defer my entry? Like, not, and I'm like, shut it down. Like, nope, you're doing this. Like, you've committed, you've done the, you know what I mean? I've done the
yeah,
work. I'm as prepared as I can be.
yeah,
Just kind of getting out there. So it'll be awesome. So, but yeah,
yeah.
it's no
I
time
think
like the
that's
present to embrace it. So
that's that's an inevitable part of anyone who sets
I know.
big goals is you always get that like, "Oh, shit," "What
I,
what have I
right.
what have I done?" Like, and then too, there's like when you get weather and you get, you're like, it's one little, you're like, well, the weather could be better next year, and like maybe I could defer, and like, oh, I don't want to. like you start to
I know.
compile all these like
Oh yeah.
excuses or reasons in your head. And
Well,
good.
I call it the soft talk, you know what I mean? That gets in there that's just like, well, like maybe I'll just ride and like sleep through the night and whatever. I'm like, pardon
No.
my language, screw that. Like, first of all, I didn't pay that entry fee to, you know what I mean, to I can sleep another night, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny. I went on a group ride, which I don't normally do. I've purposefully been doing a crap ton of solo training just to,
Uh,
just to like, and I don't do music, I don't do anything. Like I just get out there and just like I love the sound of like the tires on the dirt and like all that good stuff. So I just kind of get in that meditative space after like the first half an hour when I'm like, oh, I feel like crap. I don't really feel like doing this, right? Then I kind of settle in.
yeah.
But I went on
Yeah.
a group ride the other night with majority were dudes, and it was really interesting to get all the advice from these dudes who've never done a 24-hour solo, like, and actually who
What
don't even like
what
do
what were
in.
they
Oh,
what were they telling you?
oh, they were like, "Well, have you thought about your fueling strategy?" I was like, part of me wanted to be like,
Like, no shit.
"No." Right, exactly. I was like, "Really? Like, fueling? Like, should I be thinking about this?" And, you know what I mean? And, "Oh, you gotta make sure, like, you're hydrating." "Really?" Like, I just, so it's this, like, weird space of, like, you aren't really being that patronizing, but you are. Like, it's
Right.
I'm just like, "Wait a minute." And so, so I kinda sneak in, like, you know what I mean? Well, I've done, you know what I mean? So many duos and quads and 5 person and whatnot. And so this is like the next step for me. And so, but yeah, you get all this unsolicited advice, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Right.
somehow from like the dudes to the chick, if you would, it's like it just comes across like, okay, all right,
Yeah.
all right. I'll just be like, nothing gives me more joy than being on a single speed and saying on your left to the dudes when you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I
You're
love
coming
that.
around. So, and no, I'm not, no, I'm not the fastest racer out there. I didn't start even riding until later in life, but I'm solid. You know what I mean? And so it's
Yeah.
it's like
You've put in your time. Like you got you got you've earned your stripes, right? Like it's not like
right.
you're just like grabbed your bike off the bike shop shelf and you're like, I wonder what this is like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I keep seeing I got kind of sucked into that Lifetime series. So with, you know what I mean, with all the races, and I
Yeah.
watched the one the other night on the Crusher, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh no,
Yeah.
people. I mean, it's like every once in a while, like it pops back in my head, like, do I want to go back? Oh heck no! Like,
Yeah. That those
I'm like,
climbs are like
oh,
unreal. That's a tough one.
well, that
Um,
was yeah, I probably bit off a little more than I could chew. Just speaking of gearing, I was like, I'm gonna run a one by, and I'm gonna this, and I'm gonna that, and oof, you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
like that was
All the
that was
gears.
rough, but yep, all the gears, exactly, all the spinning. Like I needed
Right.
all the gears. And I didn't
Right.
have all the gears, so it's all good. It's all good, but lots of lessons learned. I guess that comes with life
Yeah.
and age, right? Too.
Yeah.
So
So I mean, you've learned those lessons like relatively recently in life.
right.
Tell because you didn't start. When did you start riding?
God, I didn't even
Or
put
maybe
my
mountain biking? Because I mean, you had a history as a multi-sport athlete, and I mean,
right.
you were active, but um, we won't tell anyone. It's okay.
Exactly.
Your secret is no longer safe, actually, now that it's on
Exactly.
this podcast. Um,
Exactly. The world knows she did triathlons. I never
yeah,
owned an aero helmet though, so I'm kind of proud of that. Like I held true to
yeah.
like I'm
I mean,
just gonna wear
another
a
year
regular.
though, you would have been in there. Like
Oh,
we happened to pull you to safety just soon enough.
exactly. So no, I came from a running background. So and I think that will probably always be my first like true love as far as activity and then yeah, went to the other side and did the triathlon and didn't throw my leg over a mountain bike till I was 41 years old. And
Mhm.
there's a long kind of sorted history and story behind being a doctoral student and unfortunately getting hit by a car during a triathlon and mom passing away and life kind of happening that just brought me to a space of like I'm going to do this mountain bike thing. Like, I'm, you know what I mean? And what is this all, what is this all about? And it was like, I drank the Kool-Aid and like, just was like sucked in immediately. So I, I remember vividly, I remember having, a mountain bike when I was in my doctoral program, like a good old Specialized mica, like
Yeah, a women's
a
specific.
yeah,
Yeah,
women's specific aluminum, heavy as heck, probably a 3 by, you know what I mean, or something at the time. So,
yeah,
but yeah, I just thought I was just awesome, but I couldn't quite let go of like my knee-high triathlon compression socks and like, you know what I mean, like all this good stuff, and
yeah.
had what I mean, the roadie helmet with like, yeah, I was just a hot mess. Um, but just decided, you know what I mean, to get out there and give it a go, and I sucked, and I kept at it, and there's times when I still think, you know what, I still kind of suck at whatever, but I'm still getting out there and kind of getting after it. And so this year will mark my 10th year of being
Nice.
on a mountain bike, which is pretty cool. I was talking to somebody the other day about cycling age,
Mm,
and they looked at me and they're like, "What do you mean cycling age? I know you know what I'm talking about." And I said, although I've been riding for 9 years, I said, really, I sometimes feel like my cycling age is only 6, um, because of the kind of riding that I like to do. Truthfully, when I went to Montana, we were in Montana for 3 years. While I didn't lose fitness, because gotta love the trainer, and then I embraced all the outdoor winter sports. So kind of kept that fitness up. But I do feel like I lost a lot of my mountain biking kind of single track skills.
mhm.
You're just not on the single track. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And 2.4 miles per hour on a fat bike just isn't quite, you know what I mean, the same. Although
right.
it's fun as heck. So when we moved here to Tucson a couple years ago, I literally felt like a noob, like all
Mhm.
over again. And it was kind of fun because there was this like excitement like in my belly of just like, I can go ride dirt today and tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. And so like I think I just saw like a huge kind of spike again in my skills and my ability. And all of a sudden I'm, shredding stuff, if you would, that I never would have even thought about.
Yeah,
And so it's yeah. So I'm relatively new, but I wouldn't call myself a newbie.
yeah.
But I jumped in kind of headstrong when I first converted from that multi-sport situation, and did the races, did the things, you know what I mean, just because it was all so new to me. I didn't even know what a mountain bike event was. I didn't even know, you know what I mean. How do you know where to go on the course? I mean, all of those things
Mhm.
are really really quite fresh to me. So when I lived in Flagstaff, it was fun because we started a group called the Flagstaff Lady Shredders. That's still going, which is super rad. And
Nice.
so I found myself always kind of leaning into those ladies who show up for that group ride, that are kind of over there, like they're over there by the tree, and they're just kind of like fiddle farting with their stuff and not quite
Yeah.
sure what to do. You know what I mean? Me, I'm like making my way, like beelining over to them, just like being slightly friendly. I mean that facetiously, and just just giving a friendly face and a warm welcome, and a, you know what I mean, and a you belong message. It's like,
Yeah,
absolutely, like, we're super stoked to have you here, and sort of that encouragement, because I can remember being in that space, you know what I mean, so
yeah.
vividly. So
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, what was that like for you to pick up a new sport, specifically, like, as a woman who, was, um, not old, but, later in
right.
your life, where, like, a lot of the people were like, they started when they were teenagers or whatever, right? Like,
Oh, right.
there's always that big gap. I feel like you're one or the other oftentimes, right? You're like, I've done it forever, man or woman, or you came to it later and then it feels you're like in a different camp, right? Like, it's hard to connect with those or build that bridge to the people that have just done it forever, or it's just part of their life, or they've lived in these towns where it's so accessible and this that and the other. Like, what did that Yeah, like, I mean, what did that feel like? Did it feel like you were an outcast? Like, was it hard to break in?
It's
Um,
You know what? So my personality, and you know me well. So like my personality kind of played in my favor,
mhm,
in that like I'm super friendly, super outgoing, you know what I mean? So I had no problem kind of introducing myself, but yet the dialogue and the narrative in my head was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like I'm an imposter here. Like I'm pretending. I don't even know what they're talking about when they're talking about a one by or a, you know what I mean? Their teeth on their cassette. What is a cassette? Just like I didn't fit in. So most
mhm,
certainly, and yeah, and I appreciate you recognizing I wasn't old, maybe seasoned, or you know what I mean, mature. Um, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, like I showed up to rides or to things like being the mom. You know what I mean? It's
mm,
like, oh, mom showed up. You know what I mean? Like you know, like these kids are in their 20s. Like I could be their, like, I could literally be their mom. And but yet I didn't bring the experience, and
mm,
so I'm writing things or like getting off and walking, you know, I mean, where I know people were thinking like, what, like, that is no big deal, right? And I'm just like, I'm freaking terrified.
yeah,
So I think part of it too was back to, you know, you get hit by a car, but in my case, a cab. I happened to get hit during a race, so I was hauling ass, and you know, to have that just kind of like just that whole experience left me with a pretty jacked up left hip, so that I, you know, went through rehab and therapy and all sorts of good things, but chose to not have surgery, just to the inherent risks of what was going on, and I'm happy I didn't. But I also recognized over time that I was entering a sport at a later age. I was also entering with this like sort of guardedness of
mm,
my whole left side. So
mm,
because my left hip like couldn't take another big blow, right?
mhm,
And so even to this day, so when I ride, I choose to dismount on the right side. You know what I mean? And yes, I know, like, and I do dismount on the left side when I'm, you know, uphill and I need to, you know, lean into the mountain or whatnot. But I know inside I'm always kind of guarded in that sense, you know what I mean? And
mhm,
for the longest time, I used to ride really guarded, and what I mean is like I rode like tensed up on the left side and like relaxed on the right side,
mhm,
and so it was kind of given me some problems. So yeah, it was it. I think hard is an okay word to say. Like it was hard. It was hard to show up, and you want to fit in, like you want to be, you know what I mean, whatnot. And then these people take off at seemingly like lightning speed, and you're like, hang on, you know what I mean? And wait, what am I doing? And when do I shift? And you know, how do I do this? So um, but I'm glad I stuck with it. Like
yeah,
I really am. And I think that I come to this space of now being a cycling coach, and an instructor. I come to it with a different um, lens and an empathy, I think that maybe others can't bring sometimes. So it's
yeah,
because I know exactly what that was. I know what it feels like to roll up and be everybody's waiting for you. You know what I mean? And you're out of
right,
breath, or you're pushing your bike, or you're doing whatever, and you're apologizing. You know what I mean? And saying, you know, sorry, you know, thanks for waiting, and you know, and
yeah,
people are like, you know, ready to take off again. You're like, ah.
yeah, right. Like, I'm just catching my breath.
Exactly. I just got here. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, you and I have talked about this. You know, I think you've called it, or we've kind of landed on the like term soft talk, and I think
Oh yeah.
it often rears its kind of ugly head, specifically with female athletes, um, newer or not. I don't know, like, yeah, what was your experience and kind of, I don't know, how's that been for you, like on the athlete side and then on the coach side? Because I mean, it feels like in the discussions you and I have had about it, it seems like such an unfortunate barrier for people. Again, more often than not, female athletes, like it's such an unfortunate part of their experience that I think can be such a turnoff and such a drain on their confidence and such a, you know, I mean, it's just it's like I don't know. So yeah, what's that? Did you experience that? And then how do we, how do we right that ship? Because you and I are both in the same campus. Like we got to get more people out there. Age be damned. Like it needs to be approachable, right? Like what an
Exactly.
amazing opportunity to do anything at any age.
Exactly.
You need the right experience. You need to feel like it's accessible. You need to feel like you're welcome. Um, so yeah, what's the soft talk game been like for you?
It's funny. The first time I heard soft talk, I have purposefully surrounded myself. I've shared this with you, with a lot of super badass lady mountain bike coaches, and when I first heard soft talk, I was like, what is soft talk? And then when the examples were given, I was like, oh yeah. So the soft talk is the other night. You know what I mean? I show up for a group ride, and there are 8 people there. There are 6 men, so myself and one other woman, and instantly, so the situation goes as such. You know what I mean? The other woman and I sort of glom towards each other. So and just kind of sharing and talking, and we happen to have the same bike, just different models, different years or whatnot. So we're just just like entering this conversation. The dudes, if you would, happen to separate themselves a little bit, and then the dudes position themselves in front and are like, we're ready to go, and like off they take off. Um and I found my, like, in my head, I'm like, no, I'll just be in the back, like I'll just hang back here. And it has nothing to do with being the fastest or the slowest or the whatever, but this is a no drop ride,
Hmm.
where it's kind of like I very well could have and probably should have just maybe inserted myself like a little further up in the, you know what I mean, in the chain there, because um I somewhere in my head I thought, well, I'm new to this group, and let me just hang back. So, you know what I mean, kind of get a feel for it and whatnot, rather than having some confidence in my writing, you know what I mean, and the fact that it is touted as a no drop ride. So I can be right there in the mix, you know what I mean? Like the
Hmm.
girls don't have to hang in the back. Um, I also find that soft talk creeps in with the I'm sorry. And I brought that up before. But it's like this apologizing for rolling up to the group that's waiting, you know what I mean? It's like, and I still do, and I catch myself all the time. Just, it's like there's nothing to apologize for. Like I'm out here shredding it and having a good time and doing my best. So I didn't do anything wrong. Like there's nothing to apologize for, right? I'm showing up. I'm doing my best. I'm trying my hardest. You know what I mean? And so I just, I need to value that and appreciate that about myself. What's interesting as a coach, and working with a lot of either new athletes or even like young women in that like super impressionable, like middle school, high school age, um, where they're just bombarded. God, I'm glad I'm not grown up right now. So with all the stuff they've got,
Mm.
coming at them with social media and stuff, is like there's this, you know, image that they need to live up to, or they need to, whatnot. And so I find these girls like, kind of stepping back and like, no, I'm not going to show up, or I'm not going to, I'm not going to go, or the boys are going to be there. And so I'm not as fast as they are. Or I'm not, as good as they are. And so it's kind of this like constant reminder in my head. And then I find myself verbalizing that to girls. Like I tell them that can't is a 4-letter word, which it is. Um, and so like I'm purposefully shifting language out loud to, you know what I mean? I'm not able to do that right now, but I'd love to, or I'm working on, you know what I mean, whatever skill, because all of a sudden the language and the words that we're using in our head, that's what we manifest, right? That's what becomes our
Yeah.
reality. And
Yeah.
so I think that soft talk, it was interesting to my professional journey, as going from education and academia for so very long, and deciding to take the plunge, if you would, and leave academia. I can't tell you how long that soft talk played in my head, of like, one of these days I'm going to do that, and one of these days I'm
Hmm.
going to, and it's like at a certain point in time, it was like, doop, boop, done. Like, here we go. like
Right.
I'm doing it. And so like soft talk, you know what I mean, turned into like action. And so, it's sort of this weird space. And I think as a woman, um, I feel like for me, and this is my experience, and I've talked to other ladies who have never had this experience. So, but my experience is I feel like I run this fine line between being this like powerful woman with a PhD and like all of this stuff, um, and being sort of told to temper the Jody. So I've literally
Mm,
been told that is like temper the Jody. And
mm,
so it's like you belong, Jody, but you belong like with these four walls and this lid and
mm,
like here, right?
mhm.
And ooh, don't be too big or don't be too whatever. And so I think that that carries over sometimes, um, into my new space that I live in professionally. So
Yeah,
of kind of feeling like I need to take a step back, so a little bit. And I'm not saying I need to be. It has nothing to do with being the center of attention and being boisterous and being loud, but it has to do with me and my personality and who I am, and enjoying the ride and enjoying bikes and just having a good time. And while I love to race, I just love bikes and I just love getting out there on bikes, right? And at a certain point in time, like, who the hell cares how fast you're going? Like, if you're not having fun, then what's the point, right?
yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, what I like. At the end of the day, I always think about fitness. No matter where I'll use air quotes, like no matter where your fitness is at, it's about being able to use your body to have experiences that you otherwise wouldn't be able to have. Like, and I don't pick your sport. I mean, and literally like a walk or a bike ride or a run, or if you're climbing a mountain, like you're in a space where you have to be able to like physically engage, and there is a preparation and a commitment to yourself required to be able to do that. If you're not able to walk, like you won't see the outdoors, right? You can't go, and it doesn't have to be a hike, or I mean, just at these very basic levels, these experiences, and it doesn't have to be life changing or like, some far flung trip. But um, I don't know. I always think too, that there's a language component, and I mean, you were talking about this, but I mean, if I feel like it starts at the language around how we talk about athletes in general,
Hmm.
and like who is an athlete. I think
Hmm.
there's so I don't think I know there's so many people that don't feel like that applies to them, right? Like if
Hmm.
you and I and people that are whoever it is, even if we're being very conscious about our language and working to make sure that that language is inclusive, and movement is an opportunity that I believe can be afforded to everyone. There's so many people that are sitting there right now and they're like, well, that's not me. Like, I'm not an athlete, or I can't I can't go buy a mountain bike. I can't go ride with Jody. I can't, whatever. Um, I mean, and I think even to build on that, or as like another piece of that puzzle, I think that's even exemplified, or it's often more extreme. I found with females, right? With women, because it's that other layer of like, this is how you should show up as, right? There's all these projections of like, well, this is who I should be in this space, and I can't be this person, or like I shouldn't be too strong, or I can't be, right. I mean, whatever, you could layer in like adjectives and all these things. And um I don't know, I'm just interested, like, in I mean, you bring such amazing perspective to just that language around who an athlete is, and from a young age to on up. um what's your take on how we navigate that language in a way that opens the doors to more people?
You totally hit on a couple of things that are even different from our conversations, and I love how we continue to come back to this conversation. First of all, I love the way that we define an athlete is like anyone who moves their freaking body, and I'm inserting freaking, you know what I mean? It's
It should be that though.
exactly like move your body, you're an like move your body, you're an athlete. And so, but what you brought up is like, oh, I can't ride with Jody. Like she's so fast, you know what I mean? Or whatever. It's like, and I find myself like thinking, heck no, I'm not, you know what I mean? But yet like there's this perception out there, and I love what you said something about like women especially, and I'm just gonna kind of keep the conversation there. In my perspective, women can't show up as too strong, too smart, too whatever, you know what I mean? You can be those things, but not too much of it. So, because too much of
Mhm.
it is no, 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 no. Like
Right.
and I have been faced with that being an educated woman, you know what I mean? So, and I recognize like the privilege that I bring to situations. I'm a white, educated female, right? And so I bring privilege to a situation. And yet at the same time, I discovered cycling because of an unfortunate accident during my doctoral program when I went to Seattle at the University of Washington. I did my schooling at the University of Arizona, bear down, here in Tucson, but I spent an externship at the end of my program up in Washington, and everybody up there freaking commutes. And I remember thinking like, wait, but it rains all the time. And I remember walking into the bike shop, Taylor, and like the wall, like a warehouse wall is like full of like every bit of like rain gear that you could possibly like. And I was like, whoa, bright shiny things, like plastic things, like waterproof things, like all the things. So for riding, and sure enough, I roll in with like this crappy ass bike, and I'm just like, could you help me commute? And so sure enough, like they hooked me up. And I'm not gonna lie, like there's a lot of work that goes into commuting, period. Especially, you
Mhm.
know what I mean, if you're commuting to a professional job at the university and you've got to, you know what I mean? Like I can't walk in looking like a schlub. I've got to, be semi-presentable. But then there's a whole thing with commuting to a professional space in the rain. Like that just adds a whole nother layer. And I got to pack my lunch and I got to do all these things. But I absolutely embraced commuting and fell in love with it. And just like, then it like spiraled into this whole thing of like, well, forget cars. I do own a car. I choose to not drive it. Or I choose to drive it as little as possible. So, but ultimately, like now I find myself in this space looking back, 9, 10 years ago, thinking that's an athlete. Like that's an athlete. It's somebody that
Mhm.
chooses to move their body. So, and unbeknownst to me, racking up a whole crap ton of miles, like, you know what I mean? Kind of an ancillary benefit of it. But I'm pedaling my bike, I'm getting outside, I'm experiencing the city, I'm, doing whatever. And so I have carried that commuting forward wherever I've lived, you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I can remember, I can remember living in Montana, commuting to to the university with frozen eyelashes, and you know what I mean? It's like, and people are like,
Yeah.
you rode your bike, and I'm like, heck yeah, I rode my bike. Like it was freaking awesome. It may have taken me an hour and a half to go 3.5 miles, but I still rode my bike. But I'm an athlete, like
Mhm.
that's, and so the I think that is a question I'm still trying to unpack of like how do we change that narrative? And what I will lean into is you, we, the they, whoever the they is out there, you give space to women to tell their story. We give
Mhm.
space and like that platform for women to share, you know what? I matter. Like I belong, and I matter. Um
Mhm.
my newest sort of motto has been take the space. And
Mhm.
and my husband, in his loving way, bought me a stem cap so that says "Take the space," and it's
Oh, I
just
love that.
it to me is just super cool because you know what, I belong in that space, and not everybody is going to be as as my husband says, tiny but mighty, as I am, and like taking up taking up big space. But I also want girls and women, to know that you can take up the space that you want, that you belong. You don't have to apologize. You don't have to preface it. You don't have to anything. Like you absolutely belong. I think also I've just seen for me, and I started a high school mountain bike team years ago when I was in Flagstaff, And what we've seen is this huge increase, of course, in kids, high school and middle school, racing their bikes and getting on bikes. Terrific, right? Great. We're getting kids on bikes. I get a little worried when I see also kids retiring at 19 years old. That's
Mm,
problematic, but that's a separate conversation. But what I think the like sort of the ancillary benefits that we've seen of this great spike in kids getting on bikes is families wanting to get on bikes. So because we
mhm,
want to experience things as a family, right? And so, well, guess what? Dad has been riding for years, and so he can get out there and he can ride with his kids. So, and mom may be brand new to the sport. And so she's already entering it kind of feeling behind because her kid is faster than she is, right? And so what, you know what I mean? So where does she belong? And it's like, well, you belong, I know, out there. And so let's get you into a space where you feel confident. So getting out there and let's hone some of those skills and let's work on some of that stuff. So I think that's an important dialogue to have. I think also as a coach, like I have the ability to help people sort of navigate like where do I make the space in my life for this?
mhm,
Um, so because I've been there, like everything else has come priority. So before taking care of Jody. And
mhm.
so, but I know, and I know it's super cliche, but if I make that time for myself, I show up better for everybody else. And
Yeah.
so, how how can I help my athletes like look at their schedule and maybe help carve out some time so for themselves, even if it is 30 minutes or even if it is an hour, or you know what might that look like? For me, I have been in this space of for some reason what's really resonated with me is how good I feel afterwards,
Mhm,
and really like being in the space of enjoying that. And I'm a slow to get started person. I'm also an endurance racer. I like to ride long distance. So I know like an hour and a half in, I'm going to feel fantastic. But that first 30 to 45 minutes, I'm just like, my legs are sluggish. I'm not moving. I feel like a snail. You know what I mean? I feel like never been on a bike before. But I also have tried to like bank the thoughts of how good it feels when I'm done.
mhm.
And sort of remember that too, and know that like when it's over, whether it be half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, or whatever it might be, like when I've moved my body, I feel better.
Yeah. I mean, that's such an important piece. I think, and I totally agree. And I've talked about it a lot on this podcast and other places. Is this very real fact, in my opinion, that you can't show up in other areas of your life if you don't show up for yourself, right? Or like my kind of mantra is like it's not selfish to be selfish, right? You have to make time for yourself, right? And we're busy, and some are busier than others, and everybody's talking about how busy they are, and then we're not getting anything done because everybody's busy. I mean, whatever, busy is the word of the fucking decade. Um, all that aside, like it is our, I don't know. I mean, it's strong language, but it's like it's our responsibility to show up for ourselves, right? Like it's like kind of like all we have to do. At the end of the day, you only have your ability to like move through this world in a way that is fulfilling and where you're healthy and you feel engaged with yourself mentally and physically. And but I mean, again, I know it's easier said than done, and I know that when I say that, I can come off as being on a high horse because I do what I do for a living, and I look a certain way, right? Like I haven't had some of the challenges that other people have, and I realize those things are very real. So all that to say, like, what I mean, as a coach and someone who values movement and showing up for yourself, how do we take those first steps? Like those, all of the people that really struggle and are currently struggling to maintain consistency, right, and
Hmm. Hmm.
sustainability. And I mean, you
Hmm.
talked, you mentioned like there's these kids retiring, like sustainability is another big part of it, right? Like I'm not interested in helping people, or I should say, my passion is not just helping people show up for themselves for a season, but show up for themselves for the rest of their lives. How do we build build those skills, that discipline? So yeah, like how in your experience and opinion, how do we start to move the needle? What does it take, or where do we have to be to start to really show up for ourselves? Because
I
that's the piece.
You know what? You know what's so interesting is I just had this conversation yesterday with somebody, and I don't know that I have the answer, but it's where I'm at right now. Is as a coach, I feel like it is my job, or I love the word responsibility. First of all, to build that relationship with the athlete, right? And that takes some time, and that takes trust, and that takes being a little bit vulnerable. Um, And I feel like as I build that relationship, what becomes incredibly critical and important, and I'm hearkening back to my like years as an educator, is what motivates Taylor or what motivates Jody or what motivates. And that is like the space that I'm sitting at right now is for some people they need an accountability partner. Like they, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? They need to like literally check in with somebody, you know what I mean, and have somebody be like, get your ass out of bed. You know what I mean? Let's go. I'm meeting you at the park. You know what I mean? Whatever. I mean, but some people like that doesn't work for them. Some people want literally like a gold star, like sticker system, like, up on the wall and like physically to like physically see it, not on their phone, not on their, you know what I mean? Whatever. So for me, I love in my training plan to see green because that means like I nailed the workout. And my big thing over the past several weeks has been 10 minutes of mobility every day.
Mhm.
And you know what I mean? And you go, "Pff, like, whatever, it's only 10 minutes. Can I tell you how many times I've had red on my training plan, which means I didn't do it, which means I
Mhm.
couldn't even show up for myself for 10 freaking minutes.
Right.
I might have shown up for myself for an hour long ride, but I know for some of the things that I want to do this year that the mobility piece is super critical and it's something that I've always sort of let fall off the radar. And so why is it that I can't even show up for myself for 10 minutes? And so I've been
Mhm.
in this like space of like what motivates so and like what kind of drives, drives that person. And I realized like for all my athletes, I can't be there in their medicine cabinet like popping out with my head every morning, like, did you do your workout? Are you ready to, you're ready to do your workout? But I think that my role can be in helping athletes unpack that. So, and
Mhm.
discovering what it is and what they need to put in motion, every pun intended, to
Mhm.
set themselves up for success, right? And
Mhm.
so, if an accountability partner is, you know what I mean, like, God, it's always worked when I've met somebody at the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning, or whatever it is, you know what I mean? And maybe through the conversations, it's like, life just isn't putting, an accountability partner at the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning. What can we do? You know what I mean? What could be an alternate? What could be, something else? Is it a reminder on their phone? Is it something? Um, and then I think you hit on it, and you and I keep coming back to this conversation is like, it's actually honoring yourself and being true to
Mhm.
yourself and giving yourself that space to take that time. So, what I mean, for yourself, I think, to me, yeah, I'm just sitting with this like motivation in this space of
Mhm.
like what is going to motivate you, because we all can agree that like consistency is the key, right?
Mhm.
So I can go out and be like a super duper hard charger for 3 weeks, you know what I mean, and like wreck my legs and wreck my body, whatever. But then if I totally slack off, you know what I mean, it's like, no, it's like, and I don't want to say slow and steady wins the race, but it's just kind of like that consistency piece is so absolutely critical. What I think is
Yeah.
also key, and let's just face it, we live in a digital social media, you know what I mean, internet world. And so that, you can find everything out there. And I think what's been helpful for me, at least, is a lot of the female athletes that I follow, and not to say that I don't follow male athletes, but I lean into a lot of the female role models out there. A lot of them are switching the narrative to having fun, to showing up for yourself, to is the word privateer. So you see, you know what I mean, some of that in the
Mhm.
industry now, you know what I mean, where people are saying like, whoa, 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 wait, I'm gonna take ownership, you know what I mean, of like of my stuff, you know what I mean, of my world. Like, I'm not going to let somebody else dictate to me what I should be doing. Like, I'm going to choose. And
Mm-hmm.
that to me just speaks loudly to so many areas and so many aspects, you know what I mean? It's like within their training. And so yes, they're going out and they're working hard, and like badass is beautiful, and like all these things, all these sayings that are out there. But I think it's these women are like taking charge of their lives, taking charge of their training. They're celebrating their strength as a woman, and the fact that they do belong, and they can take the space and they can show up, and then using that platform, to spread that message. So
Yeah.
I think, sorry, I think I do want to say too, it's interesting, and I know that there's a huge conversation around body image. So, and that's a side conversation, and most certainly, but I want to lean into just the idea that representation matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I will share with you, years ago. So when I first started this high school mountain bike team, I remember a white middle-aged man. Um, I can't even say it without a straight face. Getting up with a PowerPoint presentation and the clicker, and the next slide in our coach's presentation, or coach's time together, was him talking about how to teach mountain biking to girls. And I was just like, wait, so what is so incredibly wrong with this conversation? Like, can we just stop? Time out, time out, time out. Can you sit down? So can you know what I mean? Like, and yeah, like unpacking that, we could do that for a couple of days here. So thinking about, wait, how is it so different? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like
Right.
all those things, right? And so
Yeah.
I think of the difference in me showing up and bringing girls in, bringing women in, versus, no offense, you showing up and saying we need more girls. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
like, great. Can you get behind the scenes? Can you can you
Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
you can you put me and other women out there, so to attract, if you would, other girls and women and young ladies to the sport, because representation matters. Because if a young lady or a woman sees me, they're
Hmm.
going to potentially identify and say, wait a minute, like, that I could potentially belong there, right?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, it feels like that ties, I mean, back into, or is in alignment with our conversation around who is an athlete. I think in large part, like that's why so many people feel like they're not in that camp, is because they don't see themselves in large part in that camp, right? Like you look on TV or social media or whatever, and like you're spot on. Like I am hyper aware of the fact that like I I people don't want to hear it from me, right? Like I've had people say, and they're spot on. They're like, "Well, yeah, but like, look, and I'm not. I don't want this to sound ego driven, nor do I think I'm like a super athlete. But they're like, look at you, and because I've been an athlete my whole life. Like, I am, you know, again in a particular body with a particular set of strengths, and am able to do these things, and like I think it's super important that there's other people that like take essentially like whether it's my message or somebody else's, like take it out there and look different, right? Like be a
Mhm.
different person. Um i i mean that's I think that's such a huge piece of the puzzle, is that when people are trying to get started, if we'll just imagine a scenario, they're like, man, I'd love to, run a 5K. Like I'd love to get started. I'd love to, and then they go to sign up, and the front page of the website is all like super skinny track racers,
Right.
and they're like, well, is that what it takes to be, to do this thing? And they, it's it's a subconscious, you might not say that, right? Oftentimes you're not like, well, okay, but it's everywhere, right? And you follow a couple people on running, accounts online, and and those people look a certain way, and there's a certain voice there and a certain language that's used. And you and I've talked about it, it's like there's all these words that are just become like inherent in in endurance sports, or in just like you know uh, exercise or whatever you want to call it. It's training, and it's fitness, and it's athlete, and and like you and I can talk about those things. It doesn't bother me at all, right? Like I I'm comfortable with that. However, also hyper aware that what most people do in terms of a consistent movement practice, they would never can they don't they, it's not training, and they're not chasing fitness, and they're not, and they don't think they're athletes. And like to your point, like, yeah, you are like you're doing the sum total of the effort is exactly the same, right? If you show up for yourself, whatever, 3 days a week, it takes the same effort, discipline, skills, the list goes on, to do that than I have to do, or you have to do, to go do any endeavor that we've done. And I think that like that's the big shift, is we have to help people understand that that's what is important, is like it's the sum total of the effort, right?
Absolutely.
Is that like what's required to get out the door is the same no matter what you're doing, right?
Absolutely.
And if
Yep.
it's an interval session or if it's a walk, you still gotta beat your alarm, right? You still gotta get out of bed. You still gotta prioritize yourself. Um, but I do think it's interesting. I wanted to touch on like the accountability piece, because I think I'd be interested to get your like experience and opinion. But I do there is some sort of like there's some sort of meet in the middle, or happy medium, like specifically with like my coach hat on, and maybe with your coach hat on. It's like accountability only works, or we can only show up for someone in an accountability role if and when that person is able and ready to show up for themselves, right? And I think that can be a friction point, because out in the world, in any relationship that you have, you can't drag that person to where they want to be. I can be as fired up as I want to be about somebody's goals, or who their full potential and what I believe they can do, but I'm not, I can't push them, right? I can't drag them. Like what's I don't know, I just
Well, I was just
what's
gonna. What popped in my head is I can't be more fired up about it than you are. And
right.
so,
Yeah, right.
right,
And
right. So
I've
like,
actually think I've said like that exact quote is like, I can bring 100%. So do you, right? Like
right,
I can be 100% fired up. You got to be 100% fired up too.
well, and I can't be like 195% fired up and you 5% not fired up. Like,
Right,
like
right.
it's, but it also plays into a conversation that you and I have had about actually the Passion Paradox. Love the book,
Mm.
and
Uh,
but but it leads into that conversation around like an actually like an unbalanced life. You know what I mean?
mhm.
And that's a whole like right a whole nother podcast for us to have on, this notion of like balance, and balance is everything. Actually, unbalanced is everything, because you know
Yes.
it's some things are going to take priority, and I'm not saying like get things totally out of whack, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But things are going to like ebb and flow. And so I think that interplays with that accountability and that like wanting it factor. So,
Mhm.
and doesn't like being realistic play into that as well. And that is absolutely not being in a space of like being a Debbie Downer, but somebody, I don't want to see my athletes set themselves up for failure. I want to see them set
Mhm.
themselves up for success. And so we, through getting to know them, we, you know what I mean? There's no perfect science to it. Right. And so it's like, am I pushing too much? Am I not pushing enough? Am I giving enough of a challenge? Not enough of a challenge, like all of these things. So, but I, like you, would rather have somebody consistently show up 3 days a week to walk for 30 minutes than show up once a week for like a half-ass hour and a half long run and then like nothing for the rest of the week. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like
Right.
I would, much rather have that consistency and like building that habit, you know what I mean? And kind
Mhm.
of just finding a way to make it routine. I also know that we can have the best intentions, and I've been there. Like I I come from more is better. So, and I say come from because I've moved past that, or like you and I talked about, I think a number of weeks ago, more rest is better. and so,
Yeah.
and so it's like, you're like more recovery is better because that's when I'm going to actually make my gains and when I'm going to, when I'm going to get stronger. So, but it's like working through that, you know what I mean? That piece of what are you bringing? And I think that takes a little tiny bit of unpacking with our athletes too sometimes. So because
Mhm.
I can fill out a questionnaire and gosh knows, you know what I mean? I would chuckle if I probably looked at some of the questionnaires I filled out with you years ago. So, but looking at, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I can commit 26 hours a week to training and I can be a full-time professor and I can do this and I can do that. And you're like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, all right, beer, headed straight to burnout, right? And so, but that doesn't mean like we are the boss of our athletes and like we're gonna pull back and like no you can't do this, but like how do we do that dance a little bit, you know what I mean? and
Mhm.
and 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 maybe they get to a space and they're just like, you know what, I feel like I need more, I need less, I need to adjust, you know what I mean? And that's what we're here for, is to help them kind of do that dance and navigate life. I think we're 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 coaches and sort of therapists as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but most
No.
certainly.
I Yeah, I mean, just to go back, I think that that's the more that we can come off of the pressure, and this plays into conversation around consistency and what you're just saying about working to set people up for success. People are always, so often we drive in feeling like we have to be en route towards balance. And
Mhm.
I think the faster we can come off of that notion, the better, right? Like, I'm not interested in living a balanced life. I'm interested in going super deep into the things I care most deeply about,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And like, there's an inherent unbalance there. Like, you better believe that I'm pouring my more energy into some things than others. Like, I fucking hope so, right? Or like I'm doing it half-ass. Like, and I think the only reason that I want to highlight that is because it creates it creates a pressure that doesn't have to be there, right? If we can give ourselves the grace and the space to go into something that we're excited about, to explore what it looks and feels like, to really find joy in the pursuit of something, movement, work, of like pick a few things, right? You should have a varied identity. Don't put all your eggs in the athlete basket. I'm not advocating for that, nor do I mean, that's not the route. Like, there's burnout inherent in that as well. But it's, so many people get derailed when they step back at the end of the day and they're like, well, everything wasn't 10%, right? Okay, if I'm gonna exercise, well, then that pie has to, then I have to take that from something else, right? And it doesn't all have to be even, like, your pie should be messy, and there should be slices that are bigger, because those are the things you care most about, right? And it should be family, it should be relationships, it should be whatever you want it to be. But the sooner we give ourselves the opportunity to finish the day and be like, man, I went super deep into that thing, and that took up most of my time, and that's fine, and not, again, not at the detriment of other areas we care most about. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's such like a freeing, um, it's such a freeing place when you're like, no, balance isn't the goal. It's to really devote yourself to the things that you're most passionate about. And those can be varied, and they should be. Like, you should have all kinds of experiences, but
It's
I
interesting. I find this two things. I'm in agreement with you, and I'm smiling because I'm gonna keep our list of T-shirts that we need to get made going, because this brings me back to the one we talked about. I think we should get it made that just says show up for the shit in parentheses that matters. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
it's like that, you know what I mean? It's like that's where that always brings me back to that conversation. You know what I mean? Like, yep, I'm going to show up for the shit that matters. So, and like you said,
Yeah.
go deeper rather than broader. So with that, I also think of, and it's a mountain bike analogy. But it was told to me a long time ago, when I, was new, and, I was like, oh my God, like you come up to this like downhill, and you know what I mean? And how do you know? And like people would say, like, pick your best line. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, where's the line? Like, I don't see a line. Like, draw me a line. Like, where's that? Like, I don't know. You find the good line, and that's where you go. And you this and that. And then somebody said to me, you pick a line and you commit. And it's kind of like, I think that is sort of relevant right now to this conversation, is just like whether it be that fitness journey, and I'm putting that in quotation marks. You and I have talked about the word like roadmap and habit forming and like some of these other things. So I'm not just trying to like repackage, you know what I mean, something, but it's like like pick that line and commit to those 3 days and go all in on those 3 days, you know what I mean? And like honor yourself and give that to yourself. So, and then you look at next week and you've got those 3 days next week, and you know what I mean? And you celebrate the win of the 3 days last week, and you do the 3 days this week, and like you pick that line. And so I can't tell you how many times I have been riding or racing or something. I'm like, well, shit, that was not the good line, but you know what? I picked it and I've got it. Like, I'm committed now. Like I need to ride that shitty line out. So, because if I try to change course right now, it's not going to go well. And so
Yeah.
it's I kind of find myself, for me, as particularly as a cycling coach, I just think of there's so many parallels with that. And we could offer up that running is the same way, and multi-sport, all of those good things. So, but for me, it's just like there's so many things that I've learned on the bike, and so many lessons that I've had, so that just absolutely parallel life, you know what I mean, as far as like, doing hard shit and like whatnot. It's like, yeah, you can, you know what I mean? And so whether that's on the bike, off the bike, both, you know what I mean? It's like celebrating that. So
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, and it brings me. You said one time we were talking, and it was this idea of like, well, what if you can, right? Like, what if you did
yeah,
it? And
yeah,
people, we have we lay these plans out in front of us, or we have these goals, and so often people are like, well, what if I screw it up? What if I don't? What if I can't do it? What I'm like, well, what if you did do it? What if you
well,
did
and that's to
show up
come
for yourself
totally
3 days today?
like full circle. That's soft talk. Like,
Yeah. Right. Right.
you
Right.
know what I
Right.
mean? Right? Like, oh God, what if I can't finish this? What if I can't finish whatever? Like what if I can't, what if you can? So,
Hmm.
and I on the daily, I find myself like, oh, what if I crash on that, blah, blah, blah. What if I didn't? What if I rode that shit? Like, you know what I mean? Like what would happen? You know what I mean? It's like so that's that soft talk like creeping
Hmm.
in, you know what I mean? Of like, we sort of are instantly almost like self-sabotaging. So
Hmm.
because if I tell myself like, oh my God, I'm probably gonna crash on that feature. Guess what? My ass is
Yeah.
crashing on the feature. Like
Yeah.
I'm going down. You know what I mean? At 100%. So, but and I'm not saying that if I tell myself I'm going to ride it, like it's going to go effortlessly, but my mind is going to be in a different space. I'm gonna relax on the, you know what I mean, the grip, and like all these things that I'm supposed to do. So, absolutely, like that's just it. And I think that comes to working with our athletes. And I love that word, is just like, yes, you're an athlete, you know what I mean? And what if you did show up for yourself 3 days a week? What if you
Mhm.
did show up for yourself, so for 30 minutes in the morning or 30 minutes at night, or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like, so what if you did start small and built on that success? Like where would you be? You know what I mean? I've mentioned her before. I've got a dear friend, Joanna Yates, is an incredible mountain bike coach, and she's always tossing out these like fantastic just quotes and sayings and things. And one of her big things is like, what if you showed up for yourself for 15 minutes a day? Like, where would you be a year from now? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It's like it's just exactly what you're saying, like those incremental, you know what I mean, efforts. So absolutely, like it's bricks, they stack up together, you know what I mean? And just think of where you'd be, whether it be your mountain bike skills, your walking, your whatever it might be, moving your body in some regard. Where would you be with 15 minutes every day or 3 times a week or 4 times a week. So where would you be a year from now?
Yeah.